we are seeing what can be considered a scientific revolt, so to speak. More and more we see the use of the term the dead in reference to infected individuals. What before would be considered unheard of is now being considered as fringe or even conspiracy-like thinking. To believe that a person can die and be animated in some way to effectively pretend to be alive in a sense, but the underlying body becomes a shell or a machine by which the illness is transporting itself and continues to spread. Now, how that spread is initiated is still in question. What many have assumed is that a bite or other attack for some infected is the most plausible form of transmission. That still doesn't explain the initial outbreak or those determined to have never come in contact with the illness that are still showing signs of infection or becoming fully infected. Scientists now say that the trigger itself may be death, that once an infected person perishes, that they become one of these things regardless of who they've encountered, which is a more plausible definition. This has caused quite a stir, though, in academic circles, or should I say what's left of them. The primary concern is that anyone who has a pre-existing condition such as a heart disease, diabetes, anything that could cause premature death, such as even suicidal ideations, are potentially ticking time bombs. They've been clear that suicide has been on the rise as the pandemic continues to emerge and spread in what some have seen as an uncontrollable wave of illness that has left them little recourse. And the true fear now is this may describe the true spread of the illness and how it was so effective in the way it ravaged some areas, especially in high population areas. And what we're hearing is that the truth is suicide may be on the rise, and why we're tending to see more female zombies than males is because males tend to shoot themselves in the head. But that was a quote, and a method that of course would deter the illness. They were not suggesting this sort of method or suicide in any way, so much as the idea that if you are sick and not showing signs, that choosing life is actually a much better and preferable method, and obviously safer to both you and those around you, and obviously continuing to be alive would be the preferred method of life, if you will, for anyone around, and I don't know anybody who wouldn't agree to just choose life. But that's, again, people put themselves in positions and do not realize the ramifications of their actions, and now that is becoming more prevalent and more of a concern. Government still refuses to use any term that they feel would devalue the individual's worth in society. That is their words, and that it is and has always been evil to kill someone even if they were sick. And that's a sentiment that doctors have echoed as well, although questions of euthanasia have been discussed, but these methods are more similar to how you would pull the plug and allow someone to die of natural causes. But unfortunately, it's clear that such a method of allowing death is failing when it comes to this illness. This has led to, they could survive, as some terms have been said, indefinitely. So this has led to a call from both the scientific and medical community to take care of people with potential life-threatening medical conditions, as they are more prone to an infectionary change via their demise, which is a very interesting thing that I'm now saying on air. But with the government officials and CDC rejecting the idea, it's shown little or no movement on this discovery. It's also possible they simply don't have the manpower anymore to take the necessary steps, and all that is left is a sort of damage control or damage prevention regarding the spread itself, to basically be in such a situation that you're surrounded and basically putting your back against the wall to take the action necessary. So the question of an ethical approach to the problem has been extreme, especially with advocacy groups, PETZ, P-E-T-Z, the People for the Ethical Treatment of Zombies, and no, I'm not making that term up. That was a term that was given to us from these individuals, and they have been taking matters into their own hands. Some have gone to collecting infected and creating places like farms, No longer do they cheer the hug an infected person as they once did, but now state that there is an ethical way to help those infected, and they will take the necessary steps to contain them in farms and pens, and in some cases have even put the infected to work. And when we asked what putting them to work would entail, we were told that they could strap them up to harnesses which could pull generators or a sort of mill structure. And obviously, barring the question of ethical work practices, when we questioned about how these individuals were fed, they refused to answer that question. The morality of the infected has become a hot debate, even more so. It seems that the infection itself, its morality has become the prominent discussion. There is no discussion about what we have here. We are in the middle of a pandemic, so the next step is obviously to make sure that if we're talking about people who are sick, are we dealing with them correctly? And on the one side, containment was the official response, but it was clear early on that it wasn't a viable solution. Some assumed that they believed that at most an infected individual would pass away without sustenance in short order, as we had said, but like as in pulling the plug, these infected have lasted months on literally no food or water, and the question has remained is how long before they in effect pass away, or how long will they be sticking around? And there is no answer for that. This has led to a plethora of other ethical questions regarding such scandalous things as what happens to a baby if a parent is infected and they decide to euthanize the mother while she is in pregnancy. The medical community were quick to answer even any question, even no matter how sordid, they're going to answer it, and they would say that the baby would simply pass away due to the undeveloped brain and would not become infected in the traditional sense. Now, from my position, I don't know what's more hard, the idea that they had an immediate answer for that, or that they potentially learned it from it actually happening. So now, this still leads us back to a more bi-moral position. So we have on one side a more right-leaning ideology of destruction to the sick, with the methodology of saying because they're no longer human, or sort of putting them out of their misery. Put that statement the way you want to together. It's a compassionate one, but again, people who are compassionate who say the exact same thing and actually echo the statements that we're hearing from what others have heard as a more extreme action. But we're also hearing this from both sides, and that's leaving someone in such a state that leaving in that state unable to be cured or find peace is even less ethical than any other option available. And it's very interesting that, again, this is a bipartisan position, and something that it seems almost everyone can agree with, a place that we can meet in the middle on what action needs to be taken. Still, the difficulty of who would do such an action or be such as an executioner has to be up for debate. And this is not a process that can be contained by a sort of jury of peers before a judge to decide on the fate of every sick person. No doctor could do a quick check to decide on the action either, as it would be against their very oath if the results would end in the demise of the subject, even if effectively that's already happened. So each person needs to determine the information they have at hand, and what we're seeing is those actions have to be taken on a one-on-one and case-by-case basis based on the person that they are encountering. Families have clearly done the unthinkable, but others have said they couldn't and required assistance. And I think we can't judge people on either side harshly in the tense atmosphere that we live in. No matter how bad it may seem, how hard would it be to do the right thing and put the rest of a cherished loved one, a dedicated spouse, or worse, a beautiful child. It is an unthinkable thing to do. And many have said they couldn't, and again, I would not slight them for it. The problem comes with every other option beyond that, which seems ultimately worse for everyone, including the infected individual. How hard is it to believe that a parent seeing a a glisten of life that they try to latch onto. We see this in people who have gone into comas, constantly asking if their loved one will be okay, knowing that the truth is they never will be. And that's simply denying the truth, and it's expected. And the truth is, many are at this point just trying to survive, and that survival thinking is paramount, in hopes to dodge the illness that surrounds them, avoiding the thought of what will eventually come. And sometimes that supersedes ethical decisions or discussion, no matter what side of the table your opinion may land. The emergency broadcast system is starting to take the reins as we're hearing some information right now. We don't know how much longer we will be on the air, and instead of handing it over, there's a lot of discussion we would like to have. We don't believe will continue once it switches over to emergency broadcast. But it may be more difficult to continue due to the staff that we have. We've had a lot of people leave, and to be with their families, they're trying to find a safe space. And so we'll keep you updated, or maybe just one day you'll turn this on and they'll no longer be here. So we'll see how that is in the future, because again, we want to make sure that you get some sort of broadcast and make sure that it at least goes through the airwaves, or in any way we can help from an engineering situation for that in the future. So thank you for that. In other news, military forces are beginning to return from abroad, with rumors still amassing of attacks and explosions from all over Japan, China, and much of the Middle East. All those areas over there are considered volatile, and in some cases unlivable or too dangerous to passage through. So all the intelligence on the situations are muddled at best, and it's very difficult to get within the confines of these areas, or basically you can't get behind enemy lines if the enemy lines are everywhere. But the assumption is that the illness has reached far beyond the controlled area.